So everyone says renting is a waste of money. And buying a house in Japan means that you're buying a depreciating asset and thus losing money. So what should you do? Let's talk about it. In Japan, buildings depreciate over time, generally around 30 years for a house, 50, 60 years for a condominium. And that means that things don't really work the same way they do in other countries like the UK, the US, Australia, etc., where generally if you buy a home, that home's value will go up more or less in line with inflation, and sometimes a lot more. So how can we think about buying a home versus renting a home in Japan? Well, I think the key thing here is that buying a home or renting a home is not solely a financial decision. Ultimately, it's an emotional decision. It's about what you want for your life, what you want for your family, and so on. And it's fine to make it as an emotional decision. But I really recommend being aware of all the numbers and all the costs before making that decision. So yes, make the decision that's going to make you happy in the long run, but make sure that you understand the financial consequences of that decision and that you can actually afford to go through with the purchase. Let's talk about the pros and cons of renting a home in Japan. And the biggest pro by far is flexibility. If you need to move for work reasons, for personal reasons, because your neighbor turned out to be psychotic and they're making you miserable, and this has happened to me 3 times in Japan, then you can move. You can just cancel your lease, move somewhere else, and it won't cost you too much money. This also applies if there's a natural disaster and the home is damaged, then you can easily move somewhere else. And this actually happened to me in the 2011 earthquake in Sendai. So the house we were renting was damaged beyond repair by the earthquake, and we were able to move out. And it didn't really affect us too badly financially. If we'd owned the house, that would have been a complete nightmare. A related pro of renting is that it allows you to try out different areas, either within a city or even within different cities of Japan, and figure out where you like living. And this is what we used to choose where we live now. So we rented a condominium, we really liked it, we liked the area, we liked the building, it worked really well for us. And after a few years, we just asked the landlord to sell it to us, and they were willing to do that, and that's why we bought our current home. Now, the cons of renting are that it's probably going to be more expensive to rent than to buy a similar place. You do have to pay various fees every time you want to rent, and you might run into the landlord refusal problem. So commonly this is because you're not Japanese. In some cases it's going to be because you're older, or maybe you don't have a stable source of income. There's all sorts of reasons why landlords might refuse to rent to you. And in Japan there's not a whole lot you can do about that. Now, for buying, the pros are that generally it's going to be cheaper to buy a place with a mortgage than to rent an equivalent place. This is mainly due to the very low interest rates here in Japan. It is also quite likely that any place that you buy is going to be nicer than the equivalent rental version, mainly because properties built for owner-occupiers are built to a higher standard than properties that are built for renters, but also because you can actually do your place up, and that's what we did with our mansion in the end. We put in extra windows, we put in an extra door at the front to create kind of airlock kind of thing. I wrote about it in a blog post. I'm going to link that in the description below. Another pro of buying is that it's generally going to be easier for you to become part of the community as an owner-occupier. You're going to be there for longer. You're going to be included in the chonaigai, etc., etc. Now, the disadvantages of buying are mainly the transaction costs. So every time you buy and sell a property in Japan, you're going to end up paying 5 to 10% of the value in transaction costs. This is fees, registration fees, fees to the bank and the real estate agent and so on, and all that kind of thing. Obviously, if you end up buying and selling in a short period of time, you'll end up paying a huge amount of money in fees, and renting would have been much cheaper for that short amount of time. Related to that is that it's very difficult to move. So say you have a job change to a different city. Say you have the psychotic neighbor that makes your life miserable and you want to move. So A, you have to find someone that wants to buy the place. B, the value of the property might have fallen in the meantime. And C, you're going to be paying those huge transaction costs. If you end up moving, but you want to keep your place, maybe rent it out, then that could well invalidate your mortgage terms. So most banks that lend money to people to buy their home, they lend at very low interest rates, but the terms and conditions specify that that is for a residential place. If you want to rent your place out, you would no longer qualify for that cheap residential mortgage. Instead, you'd have to get a commercial mortgage. This might require you to remortgage the property, or to pay off the first mortgage and try and get a second one, and so on. So just be aware that you can't just move out and rent out your place if you still have a residential mortgage. Now, we mentioned this in the renting section, but if there's a natural disaster, you may not be fully covered by insurance for damages to your place. Just as an example, from the 2011 earthquake here in Sendai, there were thousands of homes that were washed away, but the mortgages still needed to be paid on those. So you could be in a situation where you no longer have a house, but you still have to pay the mortgage on it. Another situation, a friend of mine here in Sendai, the earthquake caused the ground to shift, which caused his house to shift, where the house cracked in the middle, and it needed to be raised up and fixed. And that wasn't covered by insurance. So he ended up having to pay, I think, around 13 million yen out of pocket just to fix his house. And if he was renting, of course, he'd have just walked away and said, all right, thanks. So just be aware of all these situations. So Japan is prone to earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, etc. And you're not necessarily going to be fully covered by insurance. So how can we decide whether to rent or to buy in Japan? By far the most important metric is how long are you expecting to live in the property? If you're pretty sure you'll live there for at least a decade or two, even longer, then buying is cheaper, you're likely to end up with a nicer home, and it's probably the better option, provided you can get a mortgage and you're comfortable staying there for decades. If you're not sure, or you think you're only going to live somewhere for a few years, then renting is likely to be the better option in terms of flexibility, in terms of saving money on those transaction costs, and the potential depreciation of the building. And renting allows you to figure out if you actually like the area or the place enough to put down roots and stay there. I never wanted to buy in Japan. I thought it was madness to buy real estate in this country. But after the earthquake in 2011, after we'd been renting our mansion for a few years, it really felt comfortable and we were able to get a really good price from the landlord. So I'm incredibly happy that we made that decision. Owning a place has been fantastic because we were able to do it up. It gave us a real sense of security and we're saving a huge amount of money compared to the rent on a similar property in Sendai. But I'm pretty sure I'll be staying in Sendai for the rest of my life, and if that were not the case, then maybe the numbers would have worked out differently. How about you? Are you renting or buying? And what was your reason for doing so? Let us know in the comments. If you have any questions, please ask there as well. If you're interested in getting a mortgage in Japan, we did a really in-depth conversation with a mortgage specialist, and I'll link to that in the description as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.